Toots, I would like to welcome you to my internet history show. Today, we will look at best and mostly worst of the internet from its founding to more or less now, I guess. Please participate by liking and subscribing, but mostly writing to our chat. To our audience in-house, I would like to please invite you to participate, yell, heckle, and insult as much as you'd like.
Yeah, Liane!
Yes! Okay. So, I will try to make this interesting. First, I would like to talk to you about the birth of the internet. So it actually started because, it started as a military project because some dudes were like, yeah, we want to shoot more guns and kill more people. So let's make it more efficient by communicating better. So they funded this project called ARPANET. It actually started as a few computers, as you can see on my map. It's actually, the internet started as like a handful of computers by these like dudes in labs. Very boring. The only people who had access to it were like either really important people in the military or people actually working on this project. So that started in 1969. It lasted for a little bit. And eventually there was money to start funding for research that was like non-military and to bring it to a wider spread use. But I mean, even like at first, even like once it stopped being a military thing, it was still kind of like confined within universities. So during this time, like the internet wasn't what we know as it now. Like there's no browsers, there are no...
Sorry.
There are no browsers, there's no nothing. Like you need to like write, like there's nothing on the internet. Like no people have made any things. So the first things that were made on the internet were these things called BBS, Bulletin Board Services. So like bulletin board services kind of look like these. Like this is a super fancy one. This is probably like a more low-tech one. So I mean like the original point of making these things were kind of just like sharing your research, talking, like putting stuff, whatever. But pretty quick, the students who were working with professors were like, bitch, this gotta like write a little more things on this. So they started like their own little forums and then would share like really absolutely pointless information as you think they would. The first image to ever be uploaded in the internet in the history of the world is this picture. This is so sad that this is like the first actual picture. Like this is the first thing to ever make its way on the internet. So like what had happened is a professor just asked a student to like upload an image from one of their like research parties. And I guess she like thought this was a good way to be immortalized in history, sadly enough for her. So actually, even earlier on than that, like bulletin boards wouldn't even show up to your screen. You would have to like print out the result. So you would like log into this thing and it would print out like what you wanted to see. And then you could like press 1, 2, or 3 or whatever other things. And it would just print out the results like on an actual printer. So that was like the beginning of the internet. Another thing is that after a while, when it got more commercialized and people could start using this at home, like to log into a bulletin board service. So this is like on your actual computer. So it's running through dial-up, so through your phone line, and you could only have as many people connected as there are like phone lines plugged into their computer. So like if you're running a bulletin board from your house and you only have one phone line, that means only one person at a time can look at your bulletin board. So that's like pretty fucking sad. So if you wanted to like look at a certain really popular one, you would like try calling it, but it would always call busy because like how many phone lines can a person have? So that was like the early start of the internet. Actually, the first bulletin board was just this guy ran like, so like early on, all the people on this are just like a bunch of nerds, like a bunch of huge nerds. So the first bulletin board was a guy who had a computer newsletter. And he was like, oh, I want people to access my computer newsletter more easily. So that's how he created the first bulletin board. And so another thing is that since you're going through dial-up, you're going through like the phone lines. So if you're like going to a bulletin board that's at the other in another state across the country, you're paying long distance for that phone call. So people would actually only log into boards that are near their house. Otherwise, that would be a long distance call, and that would be really expensive. So it was still like a pretty localized community type thing, because you would only log into like servers that are nearby. So I got interested, of course, in what people would post on these bulletin boards. There's some really interesting ones with good titles. Like in New York City, there was Trash City, and it seemed to have been so popular that there was even a Trash City 2 and a Trash City 3, perhaps to have more phone lines going in. In LA, we had the Knowledge Adventure Technical Support, as well as the Skeptic Tank Universal Mayhem. And oftentimes, like, these servers would just die out of nowhere because the hardware would just crash, and then the board would just be gone forever because the computer crashed. So that would be a really sad outcome of these things. So one of the first computer virus to show up ever in the world was in this early network on ARPANET. This virus actually did no harmful things. It just multiplied itself on people's computers and would say, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." That's all it said. It was the first virus. It was called the creeper. And then eventually somebody created the first antivirus, which was called the reaper, and multiplied itself exactly the same way as the creeper did, but its role was to destroy the creeper. The first spam email was on ARPANET. So when we had like maybe this handful, like maybe 20 to 30 labs and universities that were connected to each other, the first spam email was a guy who just emailed every single email that existed in the world. And he wrote this really long thing that was inviting them to hear about their new system, blah, 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 blah. But this is like super long. And so at the time, this would take like a really long fucking time to load the spam email. And people got really, really mad, like more mad than now, at the spam being a thing. So since we're running on really low bandwidth, the first porn to ever happen on the internet was ASCII porn, because it would be much faster to load than images, because images were actually like not a thing on bulletin boards just because they take up so much space. So I was censored for most of the porn I was going to show you. My bad. So I'm going to show you some of the good stuff that was deemed acceptable by our censors. So this is some example of early ASCII porn art. So you would have like bulletin boards that are dedicated. Let me enlarge this for you. Creeps. Yeah. Nice. Yes, getting it on.
Yeah.
Some good examples.
I swear I made this when I was a kid.
Lady in nude.
I swear.
There are some more detailed ones, but the details were censored. Look, fella, they're called tits. Now, do you think I could pick up my pack of menthols without your staring my halter top off me? Yes. More nudes. This one's an example of maybe a more detailed one. Hunky. So maybe this is what people would jerk off to back in the day. Nerds. Also very nice.
Oh, here.
So let's continue. So since we're dealing with slow memory, people would so this thing called the demo scene cropped up, which was so you could exchange files, but yeah, they were super tiny files. So people started these sort of like little programming challenges where they would have extremely small files and try to make the most out of these tiny files and create like cool graphics, cool visuals with like maybe like just a tiny fraction of what we use today in memory. So these could fit like on floppy disks. You could send them to your friends. And like, so today to make something like this, you would use like a 3D software to kind of generate those shapes. Lower. Thank you. But so all of this is like programmed in. None of this is like actual, like all the data is just essentially algorithms. So is the music, everything is like, yeah, sort of algorithmically generated. So that was sort of like the early internet, wherein that was like pre-World Wide Web. So this is like all local networks. But then in 1990, Tim Berners-Lee created what we know as the World Wide Web, which is like the 3 Ws with all the like standards we use today, like HTML, which is hypertext markup language, which is like a sort of standardized way in which pages are shown. So all this good stuff. So that kind of changed the game. And one of the big players who helped this was AOL. So in 1983, this guy just kind of like has this video game company, and he wants people to have video games that they can download through the web. But there was actually a huge video game crash in 1983, so his dreams were crushed with the crash. And eventually, this sort of whole idea of this gaming network was adapted for the Commodore computer, and eventually repackaged for Apple, repackaged for PC into local network stuff, and eventually became AOL, America Online. So these guys are sort of like the ones who brought the mainstream internet to the public, like whereas most other companies at the time were focusing on the nerds who had previously been using computers, these guys wanted like kids, families, the elderly to use AOL, and they did so by doing probably the like most ambitious marketing campaign that was ever done in like ever. So essentially they did this thing where they just gave AOL for free to everyone. They would like send CDs to people's homes. At first they sent floppy disks, and then they sent CDs, and then it got like a huge craze. Like you would get it with your newspaper and magazines. You would get like some people would get it with like their school lunches and cafeterias. Like you would get it in cereal boxes, and they just spent a lot of money just distributing their sort of like package, which really allowed people to have internets in their homes. Then, of course, I'm not going to talk about the 2000s crash because that's boring, but essentially people gave a lot of money to tech companies because they were like, oh, wait, the internet is really cool. And then companies like Pets.com, one of the biggest one, who were worth like $300 million in like 1997. They would sell like pet food online. So eventually they have actually really good, let's look at Pets.com. They have some really good promotional material. Let me play this in the background. Oh no. Anyways. So one of the few businesses that survived the dot-com crash is websites like eBay. eBay made it, was founded in 95, and they're still around. Amazon was prior to the dot-com crash, they're still around. Okay, you guys want it.
Jackpot! There's enough food here to feed a lion. What goes up? Try to get it. Try to get it. Try to get the burger. Must come down.
So essentially, people with lots of money saw shit like this, and they were like, yes, this is gold. We will invest in this shit. We will give it $300 million. And then turns out, oh, that wasn't a great idea. Who would have known? So after all of this, so now year 2000s has passed. A lot of websites are dead. Sort of everybody has internet in their homes. So now there's a rise. We still like don't have sort of aggregator websites as we have now. So like Google, Facebook, all that stuff, that doesn't exist. So what people have is one-off websites. Oh, my porn. Let me close my porn. So we have these one-off websites, kind of like this one, where essentially people would like have these little websites, and the way they would go around is kind of people showing them to each other through email or stuff like this. This boy made this website.
Hello, my future girlfriend. This is what I sound like. I am 11 years old in the 6th grade in New Mexico. Please PM me if I'm on Yahoo Chat. Bye. Thanks for stopping by.
So essentially, this website became extremely viral. And yeah, people would kind of make their own little things like this. And eventually somebody made this website called YTMND, which is sort of a generator. This is what this website was made on, is a generator for websites that kind of come in this format with like tiled images in the back with just text, picture, and audio. And so YTMND was sort of like how a lot of these websites got popularized. It was founded in 2004, but kind of peaked around 2006. So they would host like all sorts of things. And back in the day, memes or viral things would be called fads. So like specific trends of like how to make a specific website would be a fad on YTMND, which standard for youaretheman.com. And they kind of did this because otherwise like these one-off websites would just kind of like pop on, but would disappear like instantly because nobody was hosting it, or, you know, people didn't want to pay for the hosting out of pocket. So they would kind of host these websites for everyone. And then you had like sort of a leaderboard or who has the best website and like what's popular and this and that. And they were also a super early fighters for free speech because like they couldn't control what the user base would come up with, and people would come up with, of course, some dumb shit. So they were sued like left and right by like all sorts of people, but they were notably sued by Pez because somebody had made a Hitler Pez. And so, of course. And so YTMND was actually in the really early people to fight for free speech online. So the way they would answer to some of these things, like the way they answered to this Pez situation is by starting a Pez competition with their fan base and asking them to create the best Pez, and they just like did not care about the lawsuits, I guess, because they were sort of protected under free speech and under parody law. So they were kind of the first to argue that on the internet. Some other people to argue that on the internet, and this was like super controversial at the time, was Rotten.com. And like, as you will see, many of the things on the internet, including the early internet, is just bad. So Rotten.com was just kind of like gore and bullshit and all of that, and some like very offensive content. And early internet laws, actually the first laws that were introduced in the States were to kind of like take down this sinful content from the internet. And Rotten.com were in the first ones to kind of like fight in the legal system to protect to kind of like fight censorship laws on the internet. And in the media, people were like, let me see if I can find a clip of this. People were like, mainstream media was really outraged that like these Satanists would kind of like, you know, fight to have this content up on their websites. And they were like, the internet is corrupting our youth, which might have been true, but ultimately, those laws were thrown out, like most laws afterwards that tried to censor the internet. So moving on. Yes, we had to go through there. So in 1996 in Japan, somebody created this website called Ayashi World, which kind of translates to Strange World. It was board. So eventually, like, we moved out of BBS bulletin boards and moved on to actual forums that were kind of more like anonymous places. And this Ayashi World was kind of like what we know today as B. So like hacking, anime, like games, like otaku shit. Ultimately, the interface was like really shitty, and somebody made 2chan, the second channel, because Ayashi World was the first channel. So ultimately, somebody made 2chan, and then somebody else made Futuba, which was sort of like, I guess, an offshoot of 2chan, but that one was in English. So Futuba was like the first link to sort of like this type of culture for people in the West. This sort of like weird, like gory, also like very illegal, like pornography on there, like just like some deranged shit mixed with like cute anime shit. Anyways, so people loved it, of course. On another popular website at the time, Something Awful, there was the ADTRW board, short for Anime Death Tentacle Rape Whorehouse. And on this, this guy Moot, he was probably like 14 or 15 at the time. All of these guys were like looking at this stuff. Okay, this is awesome. And he kind of like created 4chan allegedly because he wanted to have the cool email to show off to his friends, because 4chan was kind of like 2 times 2chan or something. It sort of, I don't know, it made sense to them. So at first he created 4chan because he wanted the cool email to be like, oh, you guys, look at me. And then ultimately, I guess he came through with making the actual website. And so he made 4chan.net in 2003. And the first board that he creates is B, for anime and random shit. Ultimately, he'll create like other boards like hentai and goro, sort of following the trend of what was happening on the Japanese forum. So the main stuff were like anime, gore, and hentai, of course. And at first it was mostly like translated Japanese content. And it was like a home for essentially weeaboos and people with like deviant sexual interests. Oh, should I like move these images? Perfect.
Covered them.
It's fine.
Can we put you in the place where it says you want dating me?
So then there was sort of like a war between Futuba and 4chan, because Futuba is like, bitch, why are you stealing my content? This and that. Ultimately, none of that matters. 4chan was still a thing. It got shut down a couple of times. So when Futuba got mad, they actually snitched to the people, like the service provider hosting 4chan, and then 4chan got shut down, and then it reopened, and then they snitched to PayPal, and then PayPal shut down their donation, like button, so then they couldn't get donations anymore. And then 4chan.net shut on and off maybe like 4 or 5 times. Ultimately, it moved to 4chan.org. Because it just kept on like, you know, getting into trouble. So once it was on 4chan.org, a lot of things happened. Some notable things are obsessions with multiple girls. So 4chan like kept on being this like place of deviancy, and they would kind of always create new boards to kind of like push people out of the sort of general B board into their own little boards and hope that they never come out. So maybe a recent example of that is the creation of the Brony board, where they push the bronies into their own board and hope that they never come out of there. So some early obsessions of 4chan, apart from gore and illegal porn, was... So we have a few instances of these. First one was Cracky-chan. She was a cam girl, or she is a cam girl. Okay, let me just show you pictures of Cracky-chan. So essentially, she just kind of looked like weird and creepy and emo. And of course, like the teenage boys on 4chan love that. So she became like sort of the first goddess of 4chan, where people would kind of like make fan out of her and just post that shit everywhere. Of course, another, actually a figure which divided 4chan into haters and admirers are fans of Boxy.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Boxy, and today I am coming out of the stables. That's right. I love My Little Pony.
What?
Yeah.
This is a recent video.
Oh, wow.
That's not what we want to see. Boxy.
Okay, hi. So, my name is Boxy, and it's been a while since I made a new video, so I decided that because of recent events that I could make a new video. And, so let's just start off by getting a couple things straight. I don't do drugs. No, I know that you all think that I do drugs, but I don't, actually, and I actually don't have ADD either, which is funny to me. Yeah, and then...
Okay, so this just goes on for a really long time. So, Boxy, so at the time, this aesthetic was like goals for 4chan boys, and actually, I have to say, I definitely had my emo phase. I definitely had those bangs, and I definitely maybe looked up to Boxy for maybe a couple of months. So they had like fan art, like, and so this was like a huge thing where it divided the community. because people are fucking sick and tired of having Boxy everywhere. I'm sure you can still see her on B if you go to 4chan today. Another one of these girls was Creepy Chan, who actually made it onto America's Next Top Model. So none of these, I think, reached the levels that Boxy did. But, I mean, Creepy Chan did get a lot of, like, mainstream attention.
Oh, look at you up there. It's such a cute little picture.
Thank you. After having the first photograph, I feel a little bit, like, shaky just in terms of just nerves and just being like, oh, I feel an unbelievable amount of pressure to do.
Anyways, so she was like also very artsy, emo type of girl. 4chan loved her. And we can see, so some of the YouTube personalities after that kind of like emulated that style as well. We can see this is the first video posted on YouTube ever. YouTube was created in 2005.
All right, so here we are in front of the elephants. Cool thing about these guys is that they have really
Extremely unremarkable video.
fronts, and that's cool.
So this is the first video ever uploaded to YouTube. Early YouTubers had quite a specific aesthetic. Magibon was a huge star when it started. Huge star, 1.7 million view, but at the time that was really big. All of her she has about maybe 60 videos right now uploaded. They're all her just looking into camera, saying nothing. So she kind of follows this sort of like Creepy Chan aesthetic, sort of like kind of looks Asian, kind of looks weeby. We're not too sure what's going on. She eventually starts saying like simple things in Japanese in her videos and writes her titles in Japanese, but I don't actually think she's Asian. So anyways, that's like all of her videos. So early YouTube was like perfect for the rise to fame of like people producing actually really horrible content. Notable figure being Fred, who actually still posts. Shane Dawson, also one of the early ones to rise to fame.
So I was doing a little browsing on YouTube.
Of course, everybody's emo back in the day. That's really sad that like all of these things,
Fred is basically
all of these early internet people who have now made it into internet history, really sadly, all have these terrible haircuts and terrible sense of style, which are just like immortalized forever. Did any of you actually watch any of these people back in the day? I remember watching Shane Dawson and being like, binge. We have to see at least one Fred. But this is like recent Fred. Let's go back in the archives. Actually, I might scroll for a really long time, so I'm just gonna keep on talking. Or actually, I don't know, I have more videos to show, so. So Fred actually isn't that popular anymore, but a lot of these early YouTube stars.
Hi, this is Fred. Anyways, my mom hired some retarded babysitter who thinks she's the boss of me.
Anyways, a lot of these early YouTube stars are still like producing content, like Philip DeFranco is one of those. I think Jenna Marbles as well. Because today the way algorithms work, it's much harder for people to just rise to fame like this, with just like pure like content and no like specific marketing campaigns. So these early guys are now making like shit ton of money, but for people to become famous YouTubers now, it's like a whole algorithm and marketing game, which was not the case back in the day. Sort of riffing off of that aesthetic of all of these other girls that we saw earlier is Poppy, which was viral. This came out in 2015.
I'm Poppy.
I'm Poppy. I'm Poppy. I am Poppy. I'm 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 Poppy.
So we can kind of see like the evolution from those. So this has 22 million views. So like we can see the clear evolution from those early, 4chan megastar creepy girls to kind of shit like this. But actually, Poppy is a ripoff of it's like a whole controversy thing. She's a copy of Mars Argo. So like this girl Mars Argo was working with like her boyfriend producer who was like a piece of shit guy, and then he kind of like ditched her, stole her brand, and then replaced her with a different girl. Titanic Sinclair. And then so Mars Argo, she's a musician, and he kind of like stole her whole thing, and then got a girl who looked exactly like her and kind of like dressed her like his ex, and then just stole her brand. And then Poppy went viral. So Mars Argo like sued her. I can't find anyways, I don't have the one clip that's essentially the Poppy brand, but that's what happened with that. So that's some recent controversy. So where are we? So let's go back a little bit to our 4chan that we did a little that we got sidetracked a little bit. So 4chan is also known for doing raids. So they've kind of been doing raids from the first day, which is also something that the Japanese equivalent would do. So 4chan is founded on illegal child pornography, hentai, anime, and essentially like gore and bullshit. So obviously a bunch of their early raids were just pure bullshit. One of this example is the great 2006 Habo raid. This was a coordinated effort between multiple websites, not only 4chan, there was also Encyclopedia Dramatica and a bunch of other websites. Oops, I'm so sorry for your ears. So essentially, Habbo Hotel is sort of like a kid's game. So the whole thing behind this is that they made characters that they called negras, and they were essentially black characters with afros wearing suits. And they would kind of like gather around the pools, and then to prevent players from getting close to the pools, and then say that the pools were closed due to AIDS. So this was the kind of like early shit that 4chan raids would do. A lot of like anti-Semitic shit, a lot of racist shit. And this is sort of like 2006 is also the year that 4chan kind of got like mainstream media attention. Of course, like news outlets were absolutely outraged. More of that Rotten.com stuff of like the internet corrupting our youth, which is like actually pretty fucking true. Like when you're looking at shit like this, you're like, okay, yeah, people on the internet are really bad. Like they're kind of up to some dumb shit. This also kind of the year that memes go mainstream. So the same way that Fatuba got pissed at 4chan for stealing their content, 4chan was fucking outraged that people were stealing memes, because memes was like their thing. So early memes include shit like "Why No You." So this like early meme aesthetic, this was like all 4chan content as well as lolcats. So lolcats originated on 4chan, and this was like sort of all of their original content. And then memes kind of like websites like 9gag started like actually taking the content from 4chan and then just reposting it. And then they got really, really pissed. I remember I wanted to be an edgy teen in 2006, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna lurk on 4chan. And I remember people being like very pissed about all of this. Eventually, like meme generators started being a thing, and like people forgot that memes was like their exclusive secret language code that they had amongst each other. And they let it go, but it took a really long time, I think, even before they would let go memes. Do you guys remember your first meme?
Probably one of those with the stupid Starburst behind it, like Success Kid and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were like very standardized, right?
Rage
Yeah.
comics on like Reddit.
Yeah. Those were good. Green text memes were always funny.
But green text memes even came way later. Like this format lasted for like a long time. You know, this lasted for like a couple of years before. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, before like contemporary memes came, like this lasted a really long time.
It's so bad now.
So, can you believe that people like fought to death over these? They were like, lolcats are our fucking thing. Why has no you cheeseburger is like our thing. Like, you can't take this away from us. This is our culture. Like, can you, like, what are these people doing today? I would love to know. Anyways, recently Moot actually stepped down as before I get into this, Moot stepped down, and now the mod who runs 4chan is actually the guy who made 2chan. Full cycle. So actually, allegedly, Taylor Swift spent a lot of time on 4chan. I think that it's absolutely true. And she would like make little allusions like about 4chan. So okay, let me open this up for you guys. So essentially there was a thread. She kind of like hinted all the time, but essentially there was a thread that was like triple digit names my cat, and then the triple digit is like the number for the post that's randomly generated. When there's the same triple digit at the end, that's the post that like wins. And so a thread that was posted was like triple digit names my cat. Then somebody wrote Meredith and won. And then the next day, Taylor Swift announces her cat named Meredith. Oh, big shocker. So, and then Moot actually like Moot now is like super famous guy. Oops. Like internet royalty type. Oh yeah, so Moot met Taylor Swift. Ooh. So now he's no longer this little weirdo on anime death, tentacle, rape, whorehouse. He's risen above that. So after a bit, 4chan kind of got better. They started kind of getting their morals right, I guess. They did a raid on Scientology and brought down their website. And the whole fraction, so when this whole Scientology raid thing happened, there was sort of like the good hacker guys who branched off from like the bullshit guys, like the Habbo 2006 people were kind of like a crowd, and the other crowd who were more like, hey, let's do this for the good of humanity, and who were part of more of the Scientology hack, they kind of like branched off, and eventually I guess they're the people who became anonymous and took up the Guy Fawkes mask and all of that stuff. So that's sort of like, let's stop here with 4chan. Oh, maybe I'll come back to this later. Okay. So some other notable sites that were pre-dot-com boom. eBay in 1995. The first object to ever be sold on eBay is a broken laser pointer for $14. And a successor of 4chan is Reddit, the front page of the internet. One of my personal favorites is I'mView. I fucking love I'mView. Sort of like chat room type thing where you have a 3D avatar. I was never able to like create a full account on it, I think, because I think I had like parental restrictions on my computer. But I remember essentially people having a lot of sex on I'mView, and that's what I wanted to do as well as a teenager, but I did not get e-laid. So a really interesting thing that happened on Reddit is the Reddit place. So essentially this was some sort of social experiment where you had a huge canvas of 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, and each user could modify a single pixel's color, but could only do so every 10 minutes. So you can like change a pixel to whatever color you want, but you can only do that every 10 minutes. So then this lasted, I think, only for 48 hours. Anyways, this in 2017. It was either 48 or 72. And it kind of started as a mess, but ultimately people started doing alliances. It started as early alliances between already existing boards. And then people started making treaties. So let's just start by taking a look. So the earliest sort of activity to start on the Reddit place was blue versus red. So they started from the corner and trying to make the entire canvas blue or make the entire canvas red. And you can see some other little subreddits trying to make like their own little thing. Here we see Germany and France. Germany is slowly extending. We'll see this going, slowly extending towards France. So people start with all sorts. Let me try to make this bigger for you guys. Can you still see Germany and France? Oh, barely. Okay. Ah! So they call this the second annexation of France by Germany right here. Eventually, France and Germany will reach a treaty of peace. So at first it started as just like a chaotic mess, and then slowly people made treaties, made alliances, and let me move on a little bit. The board slowly got populated. You see the place where France and Germany met is what became the United Nations right here. And so everybody sort of claimed their little place.
Why didn't it just take colors? Why did it have to get so like national?
I don't know. I think it was just organized around the sort of communities that already existed, and probably those boards were like kind of organized through nationality, and people were like, okay, everybody, let's create like this flag or that flag as well. Yeah, I guess like also flags are maybe easier to represent, like on a pixel map if you're trying to coordinate people. Yeah, but so this is sort of like the final result. Yeah, so super cool example of coordination. Can I get a charger here? I'm not plugged in.
It's not plugged in.
No. Oh, I was charged for like a second. Thank you. So Reddit is a place for a lot of things. I'm not going to list them, but one of my favorite things that Reddit is good for is solving mysteries. One of those mysteries you might know is the Reddit driver torso mystery. So it's this weird YouTube account called WebDriver Torso and only has 3 videos. So somebody posted on Reddit about this, like, what the fuck is this? And everybody tried to, make sense out of this. So people were kind of like theorizing, is this like some secret code? Is it like an organization like trying to, give us a message? Like what's going on? Ultimately, they did just figure out that this is, this page is run by YouTube just to run tests, essentially. Sad. Another example of, this was actually, I think a mixed effort of Reddit and 4chan. Or maybe just 4chan, I'm not sure. So try of G is essentially, so somebody on 4chan posted that they had been on YouTube and they were bored and they just randomly typed try of G, like keyboard smashed into the YouTube search bar. And then when they went back to their homepage, they got really weird search results. Like recommendations in their videos that would like bring them to just like really weird, either like weird disturbing content, like really cryptic videos. Let me see if I can find one of those.
If we really take a look at what we're watching, we can notice random slices of videos that don't exactly.
So they're kind of like these weird sort of like
claim that this seemed extremely realistic and
these like weird like gory glitchy videos with like weird imagery, weird symbols. all of that crap. So the person just posted what they found, and then slowly people kind of got through this mystery of finding out like who posted these videos. And it led to like there was a lot of sort of like codes encrypted. Like once they decoded everything, it kind of led to like some specific social media profiles, and then they found out that it kind of like led to this crime ring. And then they like discovered this entire mystery, and then at the end they found out that all of this was just like fake. None of it was real. But the way that they had found this original mystery was like super organic, just like somebody typing like one thing into the browser and then just like finding some random crap. And so this is the type of content that we called ARGs, alternate reality games. So alternate reality games is like a huge trend right now, which is essentially, yeah, like these types of things that you're not sure if they're real, you're not sure like who's putting this together, and you kind of like, they kind of show up organically most of the time. Like if it shows up like, you know, too obviously, then you know it's fake. But I guess the best ones are, the kind of ones that you stumble upon and you just really don't know. One example of this type of content that you're not sure if it's real or not is this one user. This guy who created a throwaway account called Spontaneous H. So you can kind of like, if you go to his account on Reddit, you can see sort of like his post history dating back like 10 years from his first post. His first post says, 2 weeks ago, I tried heroin once for fun. Oops. Yeah. So he essentially tried heroin for the first time for fun. He says he's never been a drug user. And then he asks, ask me anything. So an AMA is like a classic Reddit format where you just like anybody from, you know, just like random people to celebrities have done AMAs. So this guy essentially says, okay, I've tried heroin for the first time, ask me anything. And then people in the comments are just like, okay, you're going to end up homeless and you're going to like lose all of your money and your family. And he's essentially like, don't tell me what to do. Like, I know what I'm doing. And people calling this fake. Turns out it wasn't fake, unlike most of the content online. And then you can kind of go through his post history and kind of see like his downfall from him trying it for the first time to like him losing his job and then like sort of like dying and then being resuscitated. Not dying. How'd you call that? Yeah, like ODing, but then actually like going into cardiac arrest and then being resuscitated and now being like sober for like 7 years. He was sober for 7 years 2 years ago, and then kind of like going through his post history. So this is like one of the super like one of the Reddit mysteries, you know, where people kind of like come together as a community and are like, is this true? Is this not true? And trying to figure out what's going on. This is one of the real ones. So like so I guess that's where ARGs get their credibility from, is that some of this content is real, you know. Some other notable like Reddit mysteries are like somebody found a hard drive like hidden in a secret place, and then people are trying to like read the hard drive, what's inside of it. There was another one where some guy, his dad like bought an old casino of which the past owner had been murdered, and then they found a safe in the walls, and then they tried to open the safe. Eventually like Oprah bought the rights to like opening the safe, and then Reddit was like really mad that the guy had sold out to Oprah. Turns out there was nothing in the safe. And she never aired the content. But so there are like a few of these super big, you know, like community gathering Reddit mysteries that people get together behind. Yeah, all of this. So full disclosure, I actually am like, as some people have pointed out before this show started, a couple of toddlers in a suit. So I actually have not like experienced any of these things. Like I didn't even experience dial-up internet. So all the information I know is like, I've binged a lot of YouTube videos for the past like week, and this is where I got all of my information from. So I'm just like regurgitating YouTube clickbait to you right now. So going more into YouTube clickbaits, this is more like recent history of like the tons and tons
Yes, Mama.
of content creating for children.
What are you riding? A bicycle, Mama. Wear your helmet. Okay, Mama.
Yes. So I'm kind of like speeding through time here. I'm skipping like most of the interesting things. Or I'm skipping all of the like actual technological innovations in the internet, because that's not what we care about right now. We're just caring about the useless part of the internet. So there are many holes to dig in YouTube, children's videos being one of them. So sort of like how we were talking earlier about the way in which like algorithms work now on YouTube, it's not so much like, or I guess not just on YouTube, like on Facebook and any big social media, it's not just like who posts like is the most popular or whose post is like the most recent or whatever. It's like what gains traction according to the specific algorithms at that specific time on that specific platform. So now there's this huge rise of like these children's videos, and there was this another huge controversy called ElsaGate, where some people would produce these children's videos that seem like kid friendly, but that would actually like extremely disturbing and would like that would like look exactly like this maybe, or look like Disney characters or something like that, but like the character would talk about death, would talk about like not kid friendly shit, and I think probably a lot of it got through and children actually saw it, because I'm sure parents just kind of like put their kids in front of like these playlists and then they just kind of like watch this crap. Again, another wave of outrage like we saw with Rotten.com and all of these like other type content of like the internet is corrupting our children. It seems to be a trend for the internet to want to corrupt children. So yeah, another child corrupting incident. Club Penguin, very fun. This is more like recent, I guess it's kind of like Habbo Hotel, but more like 2010. Similar interface. This one is like, there was two modes, one that's like kid friendly, one is just like for everyone. Many raids went on as well on Club Penguin, similar type stuff. But I think they were maybe smarter and shut down that stuff faster. Do you guys in studio have any childhood corrupting internet memories?
I was trying to think if there's anything on Neopets, but I don't remember.
Yeah, Neopets was pretty safe. One thing that I really like Neopets from is I feel like some of the people, like I feel like me and some other people learned how to code through things like Neopets, where you could like customize your profile. Like I remember I had like a custom little mouse, and you could like have your background and all of that. It was like intro to HTML type situation. Yes. Actually, I read this story. Okay, I might be like spreading total fake news. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to say it because no, I will spread my fake news. So I read that Neopets started as, I read this in a book. So I didn't even read it like on a clickbait article. I read it in a book. And if it's printed on paper, there's like more likeliness that it's true. It must be real. So I heard that Neopets started as this sort of like project from this guy had like, this is like pre-2000s. This guy had like a bookstore, and he wanted to make a website for his bookstore. So at first he had like this whole concept of like, at the time this was groundbreaking, of having like a bookshelf, and you could click on the book and like the book would like come out and you would see like the book's title, and he was like, yo, this is groundbreaking. So then the developer did that, but he didn't just do like a single bookshelf, or no, the guy wanted a book. He just wanted like one book that you could click on and it would open. But the guy was like, bro, I'm gonna bring this next level, and he made an entire bookshelf. So then the owner was like, wow, this is amazing. Let's have like a whole bookshelf, and then let's have like multiple bookshelves. And then the programmer did like, this guy would always like, I don't know why he was so over the top. Instead of making just a bunch of bookshelves, he made the like entire library. So he had like all the bookshelves and then the books, and then all that was inside a library. So then the owner was like, this is sick. Let's make like a second store. And then the guy made like an entire village. And then this like goes on and on like a nursery rhyme. Like, this is why I don't think it's true. But anyways, it's true that clients do ask for revisions all the time. So I guess it makes sense. And then from there, he wanted like 2 houses, and instead the guy made a village, and then he made like the entire earth. And apparently this is how Neopets was created, from this guy who wanted to have a bookshop. And ultimately the developer was so fucking over the top that he made like the entire world of Neopets. And now Neopets is like super fancy. I like tried to log back into it and play on it, but I don't know. It's too high tech for me now. I can't handle it. Any more? I love childhood internet experiences.
I used to play like GeoCities a lot.
Yes.
That was also a good one for learning to code.
Do you want to come speak about GeoCities?
Sure. Let me see. What can I say about GeoCities? Is this the angle?
Will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nellie. I used to code on GeoCities. That's my like tagline. Yeah, I remember I used to sell GeoCities websites to my friends.
Oh, what?
For money.
Wow, that's like early
as a
entrepreneur.
kid.
That's very good.
Yeah, they used to get me some chocolate, and I would sell GeoCities websites. It was great. I wish I could remember any of the URLs.
This is really good.
Or if they like kept them up.
I think they're down now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I remember it was just basic HTML. Like you could populate it with anything.
And then would you customize it for them?
Yeah.
Wow. What
So
are
it
some
would be
examples?
like, I remember someone wanted like a diary website. So they gave me some like paper diary entries, and then I made it into a GeoCities site.
That's amazing. This is like
That was
early
fun.
internet developer.
Yeah.
Has this fueled your career dreams? Are you still selling websites?
I do still sell websites. I do that.
This is such a success story. Oh my
Of like
God.
how GeoCities launched someone's career.
Oh my God.
That's hilarious.
I'm so happy to have you on this talk show.
Just represent the dead internet of GeoCities.
Oh my God.
All right, that's
Sweet.
my piece.
Thanks for coming through the studio. I have like a really, So, about my early internet, I also have an early internet childhood anecdote. So, as I told you, I did not get laid in IMView, but I did get 2D laid on MapleStory. So MapleStory is sort of the game that would... So first of all, World of Warcraft was like a super popular MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And so you sort of like have quests, and then you gather money, and then kill beasts, all of that. So MapleStory essentially ripped off the mechanics of World of Warcraft like exactly. But I have like this weird motion sickness thing where when I play 3D games, it makes me like super sick and it makes me throw up. So I can't play 3D games. So what I did was instead I played the 2D version, which is MapleStory. And MapleStory is like super cute, like pixel, like, yeah, some really, really like cutesy crap. And so what people would do on MapleStory, it had like all of these, I think World of Warcraft was similar. It had all these mechanics where you could get married to people. And then when you would get married, you would get like a special ring. And then when you would get near the person you're married to, this sort of like special animation would sort of like show up to tell everybody that you're married. And so because of these sort of like functions, MapleStory relationships became a huge thing. Like everybody in MapleStory were dating. And so I had a couple of boyfriends myself back when I was like probably like 10 or 11 or something. And so this whole like social ecosystem was huge. And people would do this thing to have sex where there was one animation after you attack where you would kind of like bounce to like catch your breath. And so one person would kind of like crouch down, and then the other would sort of like attack and then catch their breath. And that was sort of like the having sex. And then there was this, and people would kind of go into like secluded rooms in the market where like you go into one of these rooms and you go like on an empty server, you go into one of these rooms alone, and then you kind of like people would like unequip all of their equipment and kind of like have sex. And I remember walking in on some of my friends having sex in an empty server once, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then just like left the room. So this was like, yeah, this was a huge thing. And people were like totally serious about it. Like as 10-year-olds, we were like, fuck yeah, this is the real fucking shit. So yeah, I guess looking back at all the things I've just said about the internet, it's kind of all been like, you know, and similar theme of sex and mostly animated and drawn sex of all types, whether ASCII, pixel art, hentai. Maybe I'll end my show on that. Unless you have more stories for us. Internet stories? I have more internet stories if you want. Sam, I'm sure you have stories. Come on.
Don't talk too much about
Oh! Okay. Oh, thank you. No, that's all I wanted to talk about for today. Maybe I'll end... No. I'll keep my other content for next time. Thank you for tuning in.